Say hi. Hello, everyone. I just thought I'd come on and, tag team with my grandson here and say, have a great last class and thank you for being an awesome class. Really appreciate it. He's going, yeah. What is he saying? Who's he talking to? I don't have my question panel up, so I don't know if anybody's commenting. Anyway, thanks so much. Have a great class once again, and hope to see you guys in class soon, or at another time. All right, Denise, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
Everyone is saying hi.
All right. I'll see you later.
Bye, Dan.
Bye-bye. See you later, Mindy.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, bye, Dan. Bye, Preston. Bye, Emily.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. How is everyone tonight? Hello, hello, hello. It's your last night of anatomy. Doing great. I am good. I am with you tonight. I can't remember how I got roped into this, but I am with you tonight. Oh, thank you, Santali. Checking in. Hi, McKenna. Hi, Alexandra. Hi. Hi, Alexandra. Oh, Naomi, you just started circulatory today. Yeah, it's crazy how this day is ending. So Mindy's in the background too. Mindy, were you just coming to say goodbye or hi or what?
I was gonna just listen in for the endocrine, and then I wanted to see the extra credits.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hey, David. Hi, Alexis. Okay, so we're gonna if anybody have anything they want to ask or find out before we start. We're going to start with a couple of videos. We're going to pre-watch a couple of crash course videos on the endocrine system. And then we're going to do, yes, Alexis, I do have your PowerPoint. So we will make you, we will, wait a minute. What kind of device are you on? I don't have any way to tell you guys your points tonight, so I'm sorry. I don't know if Mindy wants to do it, but I can't do it. Well, yeah, Alexis, if we put you on your laptop when it's time, then you can talk. Yeah, I can make it so you can talk. So not a problem. And then who else did I get an extra credit project from? Ruby. Is Ruby here? Hey, Ruby. Will you be able to talk if I unmute you for your presentation? Okay, awesome. Okay, so the presentations will be at the end, but we definitely will not be in class until 10 o'clock. So don't worry about that. This class is going to go pretty quick. We've got a couple videos and then about an hour lecture on endocrine, and then the presentations, and then we'll wrap things up. So I'm going to go ahead and play the 2 crash course videos on the endocrine system to get us on a fun page. Dan loaded them all. Endocrine, okay. Part 1 and part 2. I'm pretty sure they're about 10 minutes long each, but it'll be okay. So here we go.
I've invited you all here today because I wanted to talk to you about some ugly stereotypes that are going around. I've been hearing a lot of unfair, unseemly, and unscientific generalizations being made lately, and they mostly have to do with sex and your hormones. People have a nasty habit of equating hormones with a particular set of behaviors and conditions, most of which have to do with reproduction or sexual development, or acts that include what my brother John has referred to as scoodly pooping. For example, people will say that hormones are why Kevin has zits and is being all moody, or why Hannah, who's 3 months pregnant, just cried watching a commercial for car insurance, which, let's be honest, I do that too. Now, I'm not saying that hormones aren't at the root of sexual attraction or zits or occasional bouts of extreme emotion, because they are. That's just not all that they do. Not even close. When people talk about hormones in the context that I just mentioned, what they really mean is sex hormones. But sex hormones are just one kind of hormone that you have coursing through your body right now. In fact, there are at least 50 different types of these chemical messengers at work in your body at this very minute, but only a very few of them have anything at all to do with sex. The truth is, from birth to death, just about every cell and function in your body is under your hormones' constant influence. They're floating through your blood, regulating your metabolism, your sleep cycle, your response to stress, and the general and incredibly important overall homeostasis that keeps you not dead. Some hormones are just there to make other hormones trigger even more hormones in a kind of chemical relay race that biologists refer to rather elegantly as cascades. These hormones run through your body no matter what your mood is or whether you have zits. So the reality is, we are all hormonal all the time. Okay, to begin to understand our hormones and the endocrine system that produces, releases, and reabsorbs them, we have to step back and take a broad view. Not just by emphasizing that sex hormones are not the only hormones you have, but also by looking at how your hormones interact with your other organ systems. Because if anything, your body has two bosses, two complementary systems that are constantly shouting instructions over each other to all your bits and pieces. Both your endocrine system and your nervous system are constantly trafficking information around your corpus, gathering intel, making demands, controlling your every move. They just have totally different ways of doing it. Your nervous system uses lightning-fast electrochemical action potentials delivered by an expressway made of neurons to specific cells and organs. But your endocrine system prefers a slower, wider stream of data. It secretes hormones that travel through your blood, not through neurons, so they move more slowly, but they also produce widespread effects that last a whole lot longer than an action potential. Now, compared to your heart or brain or other arguably more glamorous organs, your endocrine system's organs and glands are kinda small and lumpy. They're also rogues. Instead of being all nestled together like in your other organ systems, these guys are scattered all over the place, from your brain to your throat to your kidneys to your genitals. A gland is just any structure that makes and secretes a hormone, and the master gland in your body is the pituitary, which produces many hormones that signal other glands, like the thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal, and pineal glands, to make their own hormones. The endocrine system also includes a few organs, like the gonads, the pancreas, and the placenta in pregnant women, all of which have some other non-hormonal functions and are made up of multiple tissue types. And technically the hypothalamus in your brain is in the endocrine club too, since in addition to all of its busy brain duties, it does produce and release hormones. So thanks to all these glands and organs, you've got these hormones diffusing through your blood doing all sorts of different things, but the thing to remember about them is that a hormone can only trigger a reaction in specific cells. They're so-called target cells that have the right receptors for it. So just like some keys can open many locks while others only work with one, so too can the hormone-target cell relationship either be widespread or localized. You're probably going to want an example of that, so your thyroid at the bottom of your throat produces the hormone thyroxine, which stimulates metabolism and binds to receptors in most of the cells in your body. But your pituitary, which is nestled all comfy under your brain, produces follicle-stimulating hormone, which helps regulate growth and trigger sexual maturity, and it only targets specific cells in the ovaries and testes. So, how how do hormones bind to their target cells? Well, chemically, most hormones are either made of amino acids, including their more complex structures like peptides or proteins, or they're derived from lipids like cholesterol. And this is key because a hormone's chemical structure determines if it's water-soluble, like most amino acid-based ones are, or lipid-soluble, like steroids are. Solubility is important because your cell membranes are made of lipids. That means that water-soluble ones can't get across them, so target cells for those kinds of hormones have receptors on the outside of their membranes. Lipid-soluble hormones, on the other hand, can just basically glide right through that cell membrane, so their receptor sites are inside the target cells. Either way, when a target cell is activated, the hormone alters its activity by either increasing or decreasing some of its functions, usually with the goal of maintaining your body's homeostasis in one way or another. So, if hormones are keeping your body in balance, what's putting your body out of balance? I don't know. Could I interest you in some pie? If you have a couple of nice, generous helpings of strawberry rhubarb pie, and just to make things interesting, let's say they're a la mode, your blood glucose level is gonna go through the roof. And the pancreas regulates your blood sugar by releasing two different hormones, insulin and glucagon. Once you have a belly full of that pie, beta cells in your pancreas release insulin, which helps lower your blood sugar by increasing the rate at which your cells store the sugar either as glycogen or as fat for later use. Now let's say you've done the opposite. You've eaten no pie. You're pieless. In fact, you've eaten nothing for hours. If your blood sugar drops too low, then alpha cells in the pancreas will instead send out glucagon, which helps raise your blood sugar levels, in part by decreasing the storage of sugar in your cells and triggering the release of glucose back into the blood. Lots of different endocrine-related illnesses, like diabetes or hyperthyroidism, tend to be the result of either hyper, too much, or hypo, too little secretion of certain hormones, which throw your homeostasis off balance. But there are lots of more common and less obvious ways your hormones can get out of balance, not because of some disorder, but because these signaling chemicals are just caught up in a chain reaction, which can take a while to subside. Some hormones just exist to control other hormones, which in turn control still more hormones. So as soon as one starts to trickle out, you can pretty quickly wind up with a cascade on your hands. You got a few different hormone cascades going on at any given moment, but one of the big ones, one that's really worth understanding, is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or the HPA axis, because you don't want to have to say that every time. This is a complex series of interactions between three glands that ultimately regulates lots of your body's daily processes, like digestion, sexuality, immune response, and how you handle stress. And it's complex not just because of all the glands involved. It's also one of the more crucial instances of your endocrine system coordinating with your nervous system. Specifically, it's behind that fight-or-flight response that everybody keeps talking about. The HPA axis is essentially the endocrine system's companion to the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic system, in times of high stress, does things like speed up your heart rate and direct blood away from your digestive organs into the muscles. But many of the other effects of the stress response are carried out by your endocrine system, and getting your nervous and endocrine systems to work together in times of crisis is where the hypothalamus comes in. It's the hub of where the two systems meet. It keeps tabs on what's going on all over your body, analyzing your blood for signs that something might be off. So let's revisit our fight or flight scene from a few lessons ago, the old burning house scenario. So you're sleeping. You're dreaming about petting pandas with Emma Watson or whatever when the smoke alarm goes off. Well, action potentials in your brain trigger neurons in your hypothalamus to release the peptide hormone CRH, or corticotropin-releasing hormone. The CRH makes the very short trip through the bloodstream to the anterior pituitary gland, where, because it is water-soluble, it binds to receptors on the outside of its target cells. There, it triggers the release of adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. The ACTH travels again through the bloodstream to the adrenal cortices of the adrenal glands on top of your kidneys. When the ACTH binds to receptors on cells in an adrenal cortex, it triggers the release of a frenzy of different freak-out compounds known as glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid hormones. Typically, these hormones help us deal with day-to-day stress by keeping our blood sugar and blood pressure balanced. But under major stress, like waking up in a burning building stress, these hormones, like cortisol, cause the classic fight-or-flight response, ramping up your blood pressure, dumping glucose into your bloodstream, shutting down non-emergency services like your immune system and sperm and egg development. And guess what? Now that all these stress hormones are pulsing through your blood, the hypothalamus back in the brain senses them. And because its job is to monitor and maintain balance whenever possible, it then stops secreting CRH, which eventually causes the other glands to stop secreting their panic hormones. Now, because this element of the stress response is hormonal rather than electrical, it comes on more slowly than the nervous system part, and it takes longer to subside too, as those stress hormones linger in the blood before being broken down by enzymes. So, we're a long way from teenage crushes crushes and zits and crying over commercials at this point, aren't we? As a lifelong owner of hormones, I hope you'll join me in dispelling the stereotypes that surround these powerful and important chemicals and give them the respect they rightly deserve. Today, we looked at the endocrine system and how it uses glands to produce hormones. These hormones are either amino acid-based and water-soluble, or steroidal and lipid-soluble, and may target many types of cells or just turn on specific ones. We also touched on hormone cascades and how the HPA axis affects your stress response. Thank you to our Headmaster of Learning, Thomas Frank, and to all of our Patreon patrons who help make Crash Course possible through their monthly contributions. If you like Crash Course and you want to help us keep making free educational content for the whole world, you can go to patreon.com/crashcourse. Crash Course is filmed in the Dr. Cheryl C. Kinney Crash Course studio. This episode was written by Kathleen Yale, edited by Blake T. Pastino, and our consultant is Dr. Brandon Jackson. It was directed by Nicholas Jenkins, the editor is Nicole Sweeney, the script supervisor was Stefan Chin, our sound designer is Michael Aranda, and the graphics team is Thought Cafe.
Hey. Okay. All right. Let's watch the second one and then we'll move on with the lesson.
Got a case study for you. Let me tell you about Marie. She was a healthy woman in her late 30s. She'd always been an active person, but at some point her energy level just seemed limitless. She was walking the dog 4 times a day, up at 5 in the morning, emailing her coworkers, and at midnight she was still awake, like dusting the ceiling fans. At first she felt great, she was super productive, but soon she started having trouble sleeping. She felt anxious all the time, she lost a lot of weight and noticed that she felt hot and sweaty when no one around her did. She started experiencing heart palpitations. Then one day her vision seemed blurry, and when she looked in the mirror, she was kind of surprised to find that her eyes were actually bulging out of their sockets. So yeah, she finally called a doctor, cause, you know, bulging eyeballs. Marie's doctor referred her to an endocrinologist who, after running some tests, determined that the root of her problems was in her thyroid gland. The thyroid is one of the stars of your endocrine system. It's the little butterfly-shaped structure located anterior to your trachea and inferior to the larynx or voice box. It may look cute and unassuming, but don't be fooled. The powerful hormones that it produces influence some of your most important physiological processes. These hormones, and many others, help maintain your chemical homeostasis, the balance and concentrations of substances like calcium, sodium, even water within very narrow ranges so that your body can provide a consistent internal environment for your cells. Your cells and the proteins in them need that stable environment to function, so if your body loses its homeostasis too dramatically, cellular function will stop, and as we say here on Crash Course Anatomy and Physiology, you will stop being alive. So your thyroid helps you avoid such a fate by secreting hormones that regulate many aspects of your body's homeostasis, like body temperature, skin moisture, and your blood's levels of oxygen, calcium, and cholesterol. It should come as no surprise that if the thyroid malfunctions and produces too much or too little of a hormone, it can lead to all sorts of weird and serious symptoms. And yet thyroid disorders, and the hormonal imbalances that accompany them, are pretty common. It's pretty likely that you know at least one person, most likely a woman, who has experienced an issue with a dysfunctional thyroid, and many more of us are walking around with thyroid disorders and haven't even been diagnosed yet. In Marie's case, it turns out that she had Graves' disease, an immune system disorder that results in the overproduction of thyroid hormones, or hyperthyroidism. Although it's just one type of hormone disorder, looking at her symptoms can help us understand just how important, influential, and interconnected hormones are, and why they need to be properly balanced to maintain healthy homeostasis. And I cannot say this enough, homeostasis is life. Last time, we talked about hormone cascades and how a lot of the hormone activity that's bubbling along inside of you is the result of one kind of hormone bossing around the cells that produce another kind of hormone. These pathways typically start with an internal stimulus, often coming from the hypothalamus or pituitary gland, and end in the target glands that release hormones into the blood to get the real work of living done. We've seen how this kind of cascade controls your body's stress response through the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis. Basically, your brain tells your hypothalamus to tell your pituitary to light a fire in your adrenal cortex, and in no time they've shut down digestion, released a bunch of energy, increased your blood pressure, and everything else you need to either fight or flee. And that's great! Your HPA axis is super useful when you are under stress and need to take action. But You do not need your adrenal cortex spouting off all the time. The truth is, much of the more basic, more fundamental business of everyday life is carried out by a different kind of cascade. It's the hypothalamus-pituitary-thyroid axis, or HPT axis, and it's what sets the thyroid gland into motion so it can regulate just about everything related to your homeostasis. For example, let's say you're caught outside on a cool day and you're underdressed. So let's say you were on a bus, busily texting your bestie, and you got off at a stop while searching for the emoji that most accurately depicted your reaction to the new Avengers movie when you realized that you'd left your jacket on the seat. There's nothing you can do to get your jacket back, but your hormones can do something about your coldness. Now, your nervous system, of course, has its own ways of detecting and signaling a change in temperature, but your endocrine system gets involved as soon as it senses that the temperature of your blood has changed. Your cooler than normal blood flows into your brain's hypothalamus, where it bumps up against temperature-sensitive sensory neurons, which act like a kind of thermostat. Once they detect that the temperature is below target levels, those neurons secrete thyrotropin-releasing hormone, or TRH, into the bloodstream. TRH is a tropic hormone, which means that it gets the hormone cascade started by triggering the release of other hormones. The cascade starts off with just a trickle as TRH goes just a few millimeters to the anterior pituitary, where it hits receptors on cells there, causing it to release thyroid-stimulating hormone, or TSH, into the bloodstream. That then travels down to the thyroid, finds its receptors, and slaps the gland to attention so it releases its own special thyroid hormone into the blood, where it can affect virtually every cell in your body. Like steroids, thyroid hormone is lipid-soluble, so it crosses the membrane of its target cell to bind inside the nucleus. There, it can make the cell either increase, decrease, or maintain its primary function. In this case, since you're feeling chilly, your body needs to stoke the fire a bit, and it does that by burning glucose. In your cells, burning glucose really means breaking it down so its component parts can be used to produce ATP. Thyroid hormone comes into play when it binds to receptors inside the nuclei of your muscle cells, triggering the transcription of DNA that makes the enzymes to break down that glucose. With more of these enzymes flowing around, more glucose is being broken up and more ATP is being produced, which is all a long way of describing the process that we call metabolism. But since the thyroid has increased the amount of chemical reactions going on, it also increased the amount of waste heat that's being generated. So this process has a calorogenic or heat-producing effect that helps warm you up. Now, whether or not you happen to forget your jacket on the bus and found yourself shivering on the way to work, your thyroid hormone produces all kinds of other effects as well, like maintaining your blood pressure, promoting the growth of tissues, and triggering the secretion of digestive juices to keep food moving through your digestive tract, just to name a few. So, thyroid hormone for the win, right? What's not to love? Well, what's important about the whole HTP axis is not just how it works, but also how it knows to turn off. Your glands need negative feedback in order to know when their job is done so they can stop secreting certain hormones. That's where your pituitary and hypothalamus come in. Remember, they're always monitoring hormone levels in your blood. If there's too much thyroid hormone, they both decrease their own hormone production to stop stimulating the thyroid. That, in turn, reduces thyroid hormone levels in the blood and slows down your metabolism again before you get overheated. At least that's what happens if everything's working the way it should. But there are millions of Maries out there. Plenty of people, maybe even including you, who know full well that hormonal imbalances, thyroid-related or otherwise, happen all the time. Why? Well, thyroid disorders can be caused by lots of things, but in the case of our Marie, it's autoimmune dysfunction. Normally, when you get sick with a virus or bacteria or what have you, your immune system responds by sending out antibodies that target those invaders. Now, we don't fully understand why yet, but if you have something like Graves' disease, your body produces abnormal antibodies that target the cells of your thyroid gland itself. And instead of marking those cells for destruction like antibodies normally do, they do something even more bizarre. They mimic the hormones that the pituitary gland sends out, which bind to the thyroid's receptors. So even though the pituitary dials down its hormone production in an effort to get the thyroid to stop, the thyroid does not get the message because the receptors are still being activated. Basically, the gland never receives any negative feedback, so it just won't quit. And if your thyroid doesn't stop, it's hard for you to stop. So that's why Marie was always hot and sweaty. Her hypothalamus was screaming that she was warm enough, but those antibodies were hijacking the hormone cascade. And she was losing weight even though she was eating all the time because the thyroid hormone was no longer regulating her metabolism properly. But what about those big bulging eyes? Remember those? That was weird. Well, because they're part of the immune response, those disruptive antibodies often cause inflammation, particularly in the tissues around the eyes. In some cases, the swelling can be so severe that the eyes are no longer able to close. Treatment for Graves' disease involves either inhibiting the production of thyroid hormones or blocking their effects, basically getting your body chemistry back in order. The moral of the story is that hormones mean business, and by business I mean living, and by living what I really mean is, and everybody say it together now, homeostasis. In addition to learning to respect your hormones and thanking them for helping you live, hopefully today you learned something about chemical homeostasis and took away a greater understanding of hormone cascades. Specifically, we looked at the hypothalamus-pituitary-thyroid axis, or HPT axis, and all the ways your body can suffer when that system, or your hormones in general, get out of whack. Thank you to our headmaster of learning, Thomas Frank, and to
All right, everybody, we're back. Thank you for sitting through those fun videos. They're going to give us a good start to our pretty quick talk about the endocrine system. You guys have a handout. It's the last pages of your 100-page handout for tonight's lecture so that you don't have to take notes from the slides. So let's see. It starts on page 93 to 100. This is the last 8 pages of your 100-page packet. Mindy is here, Miriam. Mindy is here, but I'm teaching the endocrine lesson, but Mindy's here. No, McKenna, sorry. McKenna, Mindy's here in the background. You can say hi to Mindy. Mindy wanted to see the extra. Go ahead, Mindy.
Mindy says hello.
Mindy says hello. Yeah, so, okay. So everybody got their pages 93 through 100? We really did use all 100 pages of the packet. You were probably all wondering if we were actually going to do it, but we did. We try not to waste. Try not to waste. Okay, so what was fun about the videos is it gave us a little jump start. And the handouts, so what you guys have is you have the PDF of this PowerPoint that we're going to go through, okay? So I know you heard him say homeostasis a lot of times because that's just what our body is always trying to do for us. Between our nervous system and our endocrine system, they're both looking for homeostasis, which is just a complicated word for the word balance. Between the two systems, they do have the greatest responsibility for keeping us in balance. They both control. Oh, there's Bear, sorry. They both control body systems and functions and healing and sleeping and growth and development. And the way they work together is through the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus, though it is an endocrine gland, it is not specifically endocrine because it sits above the pituitary in the brain, and it connects to the neurons in the brain, and it connects to the pituitary gland so that it can talk to both systems and do what it needs to do to keep both systems balanced. If we look at a little comparison, because we did the nervous system about 4 weeks ago, we know that we're using electrical and chemical messengers that follow a specific pathway, meaning going down a neuron, okay? So we have neurons in our brain, and the neurons have axons and dendrites, axons, and cell bodies. But then we have the 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and the 12 pairs of cranial nerves. And those messages travel down the actual nerve to a specific place. And we know by just flexing your arm or blinking your eye or bending your chin to your chest or wiggling your toes, that those responses are quick and they're usually brief. We do have muscles that hold postural, that hold our posture. So those are held a little bit longer, but most of our nervous system reactions are very fast and very brief. But when we look at the endocrine system, which uses hormones, so hormones are messenger molecules that are actually secreted into the bloodstream. Okay, so if you imagine a chemical going into the bloodstream, it's got to travel to its target cell. It's got to get, you know, if it's a pituitary gland in the brain secreting, let's say, follicle stimulating hormone, which is going to affect the ovaries, then it's got to travel through the blood until it eventually gets to the ovaries. So the activation in the endocrine system can be in seconds, hours, days, or weeks or minutes. An extremely variable rate in how it targets the cells. So we're going to look at the difference between endocrine glands and exocrine glands, which we've learned a few exocrine glands, but we'll start with endocrine first, because endocrine actually makes up its own system. Oh, hi, Rachel. Yes, homeostasis is life, Naomi. Rachel, you missed a couple crash course videos. We're just starting the PowerPoint, and it's pages 93 through 100 in the 100-page packet that you received for anatomy, okay? All right, so I don't know what page we're on, but okay, so an endocrine gland, and we have some listed here, pituitary, thyroid, parathyroids that reside on the thyroid gland, the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, the pancreas, which is both an endocrine and exocrine gland, and your ovaries and testes. So the thing about endocrine glands is that they secrete their hormones into your internal environment, so into the bloodstream. They don't have ducts, and they secrete hormones. All of them secrete hormones to create their message to another gland. When it comes to exocrine glands, and the examples here are your salivary glands, mammary glands, also your pancreas is here, sebaceous, and sudoriferous. The difference here is that, number one, exocrine glands are not in their own system. They really don't have much in common, except they secrete things. And so exocrine glands secrete onto the external environment, meaning if you look at mammary glands, they secrete milk, your salivary glands, saliva, sebaceous glands, oil onto the surface of the skin, sudoriferous, sweat on the surface of the skin. Sebaceous is, even though it's in a body cavity, it's still outside the body. And then into ducts, like the pancreas, secreting their juices into the duct. You would also have the liver and the gallbladder, which would be considered exocrine, in that the pancreas and the gallbladder secrete their juices or secretions into a duct that goes into the duodenum. Okay, so they're not a part of a specific body system. They secrete either onto the surface of the body or into a duct. And remember, endocrine glands, endo within, they secrete within the bloodstream, not into a duct or the surface of the body. So we'll start with the pituitary gland. And let me get my little, so here we have the thalamus, and then here we have the hypothalamus, so below. And then we have the pituitary gland, which is hanging right from the hypothalamus. So it's in the bony recess of the sphenoid bone. So it's just above and behind your eyes. Inferior to the hypothalamus. The pituitary is absolutely the master gland because it controls several of the other of all the other endocrine glands, and its connection to the hypothalamus is how it receives the hormones that the hypothalamus secretes, and together they secrete around 18 hormones. So the hypothalamus is not considered the master gland because it's actually also a part of the nervous system. Okay, so we're going to look at some of the hormones that the pituitary and hypothalamus secrete. So we'll start with human growth hormone, or HGH. Stimulates nearly all body cells for growth and metabolism. Human growth hormone is plentiful. It is abundant in infants to teenagers. We start lowering our amount that we make on a daily basis. And then we finally get to somewhere between, I don't know, 25 and 27 years old. And our daily continuous production of human growth hormones slows down. And so as an adult, our access to human growth hormone is when we're in a good stage of sleep, which is why people with sleep disorders have trouble healing. So we have more access as an adult. I'm sure some of you out there are under 27 and you can be up partying all night and get up early in the morning and go to school the next day and have no trouble with that. I was that way when I was young, and a lot of that has to do with your human growth hormone. Infants, children, and teens have massive amounts. Inadequate secretion in a child is going to cause dwarfism, and overproduction will cause gigantism. And overproduction in adults, meaning that the onset of the overproduction didn't happen until adulthood, is called acromegaly. So they might have thickening of bones and growth of soft tissue in maybe just one part of their body, maybe their ears, maybe their nose. I had a massage client for a while that had acromegaly, and his big toe continued to grow. Eric is commenting about Andre the Giant, who was very popular. I forget what decade that was, but he had a pituitary tumor that caused gigantism. We know now that it's most likely being caused by a pituitary tumor. But my client, one of his big toes would just continue to grow all the time, and he would have to have it surgically altered back to normal every several years. The pituitary gland sends out thyroid stimulating hormone, and which you maybe you saw in the video. Follicle stimulating hormone, which goes to the ovaries and the testicles for production of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and then of course triggers ovulation. Prolactin for milk secretion, ACTH, which he also talked about in the video, which stimulates the adrenal glands, melanocyte stimulating hormone, which stimulates melanin production, which darkens our skin. Antidiuretic hormone, which conserves body water and raises blood pressure by constricting your arterioles. So the ADH plays a role in maintaining blood pressure. If you remember when we did, did I teach digestion? I can't remember. I did. The kidneys release, the antidiuretic hormone goes to the kidneys. And if you remember, I talked about when you drink caffeine or alcohol, it shuts off the antidiuretic hormone and it allows more water to leave the body. Oxytocin for contraction of smooth muscle during childbirth and milk production. And of course, if you know anything about oxytocin, it is also our hugging hormone. The thyroid gland, now we're moving to another endocrine gland, comprised of two connected lobes located into your anterior neck, at the throat, inferior and around the larynx, which is your voice box, and talked a lot about it in the video, regulating your body's metabolism, makes proteins, controls our sensitivity to other hormones. It is the largest of all the endocrine glands because it's strictly an endocrine gland, not just a gland with endocrine function. And it's the only gland that can store its own hormone. It's large quality, which is about 100-day supply, which I've never really confirmed, but I've often wondered if this is why it can be so hard to balance thyroid hormones, not knowing how much is actually being stored in the thyroid gland. Thyroid hormones regulate oxygen use, your basal metabolic rate, your growth and development and growth of the nervous system. Welcome back, Sasha. Thank you for letting us know. And then calcitonin. So this is where the thyroid gland works with the parathyroid. So the thyroid secretes calcitonin, which lowers blood calcium by inhibiting osteoclasts. So it keeps the calcium on the bone. So hyperthyroid, Graves' disease, can be an autoimmune. It can also happen if there's no iodine in the diet, which we don't really experience goiters very much in this country since we've iodized our salt. But if there's no iodine, the thyroid tends to swell with fluid because it's looking for the iodine it needs to function. And you get that enlargement at the throat, which is an enlargement of the thyroid, filling with fluid. So here we have between the thyroid and the parathyroid. So if on the opposite side of what the thyroid is doing, we have the parathyroid, which is going to secrete parathyroid hormone so that calcium can be taken off the bones and put into the blood. So we have this loop here, this homeostatic loop, putting calcium onto bones, taking it out of the blood, or vice versa, taking it off the bones and putting it into the blood, depending on what is needed in the body. But this is part of the system that helps regulate calcium on the bones and in the blood. The adrenal glands are little hats that sit on top of our kidneys on the anterior medial border, produce a lot of hormones in the actual adrenal glands that help control heart rate, blood pressure, which is pretty self-explanatory because we understand that the adrenal glands are what help us in our response to stress, how the body uses food, mineral levels in the blood, and many other functions involved, of course, in the body's response to stress. Complete loss of adrenal hormones can lead to death because when the adrenals go, we lose our fluid and death comes from dehydration and electrolyte balances, meaning the sodium, potassium, and all the electrolytes that you would drink if you were like drinking Gatorade. The tumor that, or the type of cancer that my husband had actually mimicked a hormone that made his potassium levels drop. I'm sorry, sodium levels drop to so low that his heart could have stopped. So while he was in his cancer treatment, we had to make sure that his sodium levels stayed really high. But the tumor itself mimicked a hormone that decreases sodium in the body. So disease functions can easily control hormones. If you remember in the video, he was talking about our own antibodies attacking our thyroid and not letting the thyroid know that it has enough of what it needs. So disease processes, autoimmune diseases can also affect. The adrenal glands secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine for fight or flight response, which is what increases blood pressure and blood to the heart, liver, and skeletal muscles, because in fight or flight, our liver needs to make sure that our muscles can generate the energy they need with blood glucose and oxygen. And so we have the epinephrine and norepinephrine to help us through that. The adrenal glands help to adjust blood pressure and blood volume. Again, blood volume has to do with how much fluid is in the body, and that antidiuretic hormone comes into play. Preventing acidosis, keeping your blood alkaline. Our kidneys and our adrenals help us with anti-inflammatory. They can depress the immune response, and in women promotes our sex drive. So usually if a woman has adrenal hypoplasia, they have a lot of trouble with very low sex drive. High levels of cortisol, which is what happens when you are in a highly stressful situation, makes your body prone to musculoskeletal injury and osteoporosis, because the cortisol is blocking the body's absorption of calcium. Okay, so when people take steroids like prednisone, that does the same thing. Prednisone is just medicine's way of copying our own internal cortisone, which is cortisol. And so it depresses the immune system and is damaging to connective tissue. So bones are connective tissue, so that is why. So high cortisol levels is Cushing's disease, low cortisol is Addison's disease, and I believe we're going to look at the common symptoms of both. Weight gain, hypertension, poor short-term memory, irritability, excess hair growth, red, ruddy face, extra fat around the neck, round face, fatigue, poor concentration, and irregular menses. So Cushing's was high cortisol. So low cortisol is where chronic fatigue and muscle weakness comes in. Loss of appetite, not able to digest food, low blood pressure, which means that it falls further when they stand, which is postural hypotension. We have a different coloring of the skin here, blotchy dark, tanning, hypoglycemia, definitely digestive issues, depression, intolerance to either heat or cold, and then craving of salty foods. The happy little pineal gland. It seems like people are losing their audio tonight. I'm not sure why, if it's just out there in the ethers, and a lot of people are on the internet, but can most of you hear me okay? Mindy, is the sound coming through on your side?
Yes,
Okay, everybody can. What, honey?
you sound great to me.
Okay, all right. So maybe it's just their, so Ashley, do you have your hand out? Ashley, you do? Okay, all right. All right. The pineal gland. So here again, here's the front of the brain with the thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary gland. And now we're going to come a little bit back here and find the little pineal gland. So it's right in the middle of the brain, just above and posterior to the pituitary, and and hypothalamus. So we know that the pineal gland secretes melatonin, released during darkness, which is what sets our biological, or what's called our circadian rhythm. It's rumored that it also secretes some serotonin, which is, even though we think about it for depression, it's really about mood and anxiety. And then responsible for the chemical that makes you think you are seeing the light, DMT, or dimethylamino-tryptamine, which has become a very common recreational drug. I don't want to call it a street drug because I've got people I know very well who use DMT, and they're, you know, it's what they do in their recreational time. And if we were in class, I would usually ask if people had any experience with DMT. And a lot of people that do will talk about that feeling of euphoria, of largeness, of feeling like you'll never get back into your body, which, you know, if you read about near-death experiences, you hear that as a common theme in near-death experiences, that they felt like they separated from their body, they were hovering outside, looking down, felt like they didn't want to or couldn't come back in. And that chemical, most scientists believe that it's that chemical that makes you feel that, and that's not really happening. But if you've ever read about near-death experiences, actually a book by Dr. Eben Alexander, I think the title is called Proof of Heaven. Okay, Proof of Heaven. I'm sorry, I'm reading a question. Oh, okay. So Proof of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander, he's actually a neurologist. He might even be a neurosurgeon. And he caught a very, very rare virus that was traced to another part of the world. They have no idea how the virus got into his brain. And if I'm remembering correctly, because I've read his book twice, he went into a coma, and the part of his brain that makes you or helps you see the light and have experiences in the afterlife, that part of his brain was completely shut down for a week. That part of his brain was offline. And the experiences that he shared in his book of going to what he would call heaven, because the name of the book is Proof of Heaven, and meeting his sister who was born and died before he was ever born, and hearing the sounds of Om in the background the whole time he was there, a whole week, and seeing other loved ones and other spirits, it's really hard to dispute that our energy transfers to another time and place when our physical body dies. So Eben Alexander is his name, and it is a fantastic read. It is definitely a fantastic read. So the pineal gland. Back to circadian rhythm. The comment I usually make about this is that we, in our century of living, we live in so much extra fake light, light bulbs and overhead lighting, and we can light up everything. And we tend to not get tired until we're actually in darkness. When you think about before we had electricity and we used candlelight and firelight, and once the sun went down and made everything pretty dark, most people slept and then they got up with the sun coming up. So it's just something to think about, being in so much artificial light. People who maybe work night shifts and have to try to sleep during the day, it can be extremely difficult to do that because it is taking away their that natural circadian rhythm. So it's just something to think about. The hypothalamus, so that connection between the endocrine and the nervous system. But the hypothalamus actually, it actually sends its hormones through the pituitary gland. So what it works with is helping to control the autonomic nervous system. So if you remember, the autonomic nervous system is what's controlling everything that is out of your control. So what do you guys remember about the somatic nervous system and your voluntary control? What are you considered to be voluntarily controlling right now? Does anybody remember? You had an afferent side and an efferent side of your somatic nervous system. So we're not having any guesses. So your 5 senses were your afferent side of your somatic nervous system, and your skeletal muscles were the efferent side. So everything besides those 2 things, your 5 senses and your skeletal muscles, are being controlled by the nervous system and your hormones. So everything else, your hunger, your breathing, your digestion, your heartbeat, hormones are working with all of that. And those are all coming. Some of them start in the hypothalamus, but then they go to the pituitary gland, and about 18 of those hormones are coming out to regulate all of those other cycles in our body. Now we have the pancreas, which is both endocrine and exocrine. So the pancreas has 2 functions: an endocrine function that regulates your blood sugar, and then the exocrine that helps in digestion. So if you remember the difference, this is a good way to help you remember. Endocrine secretes its insulin directly into the bloodstream. But then the other side, the exocrine part, is where the pancreatic juices are coming into the duct and going in to the duodenum, okay? So endocrine within the body, in the blood, exocrine, body surface, or into a duct. So it's located inferior and posterior to the stomach. So the pancreas releases insulin that reduces blood sugar. So we don't want sugar to remain in your bloodstream, because when it does, it damages arteries and veins, and your eyes, and it actually is bad for all your blood vessels, okay? Too much blood sugar. So we need insulin to join up with a glucose molecule in order to take the sugar into your body cells. But it also, if blood sugar gets too low, the pancreas also secretes glucagon, which tells the liver, hey, let's get some of that fat storage opened up and turn that back into blood sugar. Okay, let's turn that back into blood sugar. So that's how we can get energy from our fat cells, is converting glycogen, which is a fat sugar, back into glucose. So here, this picture is right out of your book. All right, so it's just showing the two functions of the pancreas, starting here and secreting insulin, which stimulates anabolism, building up of tissues, and uptake and breakdown and storage of glucose. And then when the blood glucose goes down, pancreas releases insulin again. So that's what these two are showing. If we don't have enough, we tell glucagon to make glucose, which then increases your blood sugar and corrects the low blood sugar. And so this picture is right out of your book. So is the one we took from the bone. And so is this chart. If you wanted to look at a table showing you the different hormones, what it's secreted by, and what it is going to help you with, what it's going to trigger, what the response is. So I believe we have 2 pages here that show everything from anterior pituitary, posterior pineal, thyroid, parathyroid, thymus, pancreas, adrenal gland, ovaries, and testicles. So this is a great chart. The chart is in your anatomy book. So it's a good resource for you to check. So the kidneys. We have 2 kidneys located just anterior to your thoracic vertebrae 10 through 12. They are known as retroperitoneal, which means they sit, the actual connective tissue of the peritoneum houses your kidneys. That's what keeps them in place. So they secrete calcitrol, which helps with calcium homeostasis, erythropoietin, which keeps blood cells from dying too soon, and that would also help other body cells that might be lacking in blood. And then we know that the kidneys and the heart work together using renin to increase blood pressure and volume. Now we're going through endocrine functions of some of your other glands, in case you didn't pick that up. Your heart, in addition to being a pump, its endocrine function releases atrial natriuretic peptide that increases sodium excretion and water, which lowers the blood pressure. So the kidneys and the heart working together all day long, raising and lowering blood pressure. Your thymus gland is in the upper part of the chest behind your sternum. Its endocrine function is production of thymosins, the hormone thymosins, which are hormones that help to stimulate and mature those T cells. Your gastrointestinal tract. So when the chyme gets to your duodenum, you secrete CCK, which is cholecystokinin, and that is what forces the pancreatic juices in the bile to come from the gallbladder. CCK also slows down the rate of digestion in the small intestine in order that the lag time, if you remember, within the small intestine, we had segmentation, which is a part of peristalsis, where the small intestine pushes the chyme forward and back, and then forward and back. And that segmentation is what slows down that rate of digestion, so that chyme can be in constant contact with the walls of the small intestine in order to absorb as many of the nutrients as possible. Adipose. Your adipose has an endocrine function, and that is to release leptin, which produces a sense of satiety or fullness when you're eating. And I know that there's been a lot of research being done on possibly a lack of this hormone in people that are morbidly or severely obese. Because if this hormone isn't getting to its target cells, then this person is not going to feel full, and they're going to want to continue to eat, and they don't feel that feeling of fullness. And so it could be a really remarkable endocrine discovery. It could be. The liver, we know, was working with the pancreas, conversion of the glycogen to glucose, but it can also convert amino or lactic acids to glucose, or the glucose back to glycogen to store if we have too much blood sugar. This is how we increase our fat cells, is if we have too much glucose, and our liver turns it into glycogen and stores it into fat cells. Our liver has many ways of making energy for us. Okay, so we're going to talk about massage and the endocrine system. So when the body is stressed, we know that the adrenal glands go into action and cause the liver. One of the things that the hormones do is raise our glucose, raising our blood sugar, and then all the other hormones that bring us into sympathetic nervous system response, or fight or flight. So massage on the endocrines. So even though we're not directly massaging the endocrine system, we are moving blood and normalizing can increase the general circulation of the hormones and help to transport those. The normalizing effect that we have on the autonomic nervous system is what brings down or slows down the rate of adrenal releasing of fight or flight hormones and puts us into autonomic nervous system response. By putting people into autonomic nervous system response, we also bring their immune system back online, and we see a 30 to 40% reduction in stress hormone levels by receiving massage. Growth hormone, even though we don't actually help to secrete it, but if we can help somebody sleep better, okay, if we help them sleep and we get them into good sleep, then we are helping them access their human growth hormone for healing, tissue repair, and regeneration. This is a pretty big slide talking about the difference between how massage can make you alert and give you a sense of energy, or how massage can bring you down into parasympathetic. So research shows that, and those of you that were with me Monday in reflexology, when I was talking about chair massage is generally only about 15 or 20 minutes. And research shows that in a seated massage, it actually increases production of epinephrine in the beginning of in that early 15 minutes. And research shows that that helps to stimulate corporate workers becoming more alert, more attentive, and therefore more productive. However, if we go into a slower, longer, deeper treatment, of course, we know it has the opposite effect, reducing the epinephrine levels, allowing deep relaxation, and facilitating deep sleep. One of the first large studies that was ever done was done by Coca-Cola when they brought chair massage to their factory employees. And the things that they noticed was definitely more alertness, less sick calls, more productivity. And there's a lot of corporations that do offer what they call seated or chair massage. Okay, so it has been studied to that it does stimulate people. Oxytocin is a neurohormone that affects both couple and parental bonding. And what happens in massage is that it increases levels of oxytocin because, you're being touched, it's the hugging hormone. And so it enhances feelings of connectedness and intimacy during massage. And I think this is part of the reason why clients get connected to you as their therapist. When I was in my early days of practice and there were 5 of us equal partners, this is when I was in business with Raina, our philosophy at our place was that if I had a specialty that could serve you better than your therapist would refer you to me. And we noticed that people had a hard time going to another therapist, and not everyone's that way, but we definitely saw the effects of the oxytocin. People get connected to you, okay? So cortisol, we know, is a stress-related neurohormone that comes out of the adrenal glands during prolonged stress. We know that it can disturb sleep and suppress the immune system. And massage has been shown to reduce levels of cortisol and substance P. We haven't really talked about substance P yet. Substance P is something we see in people's blood that we've related to the transmission of pain. So people with fibromyalgia, people with PTSD tend to have a lot of what we call substance P, which is letting us know that they're inflamed and they could be in a lot of pain. And so the rest of this slide is talking about endorphins and enkephalins, which we know are opiate-like compounds that moderate all kinds, especially chronic pain. So massage increases the available levels of these two brain chemicals. So massage techniques such as trigger point, acupressure, help block pain pathways by creating a compound that mediates pain and produces a sense of euphoria. So once the treatment starts, we need about 15 minutes for those benefits of the enkephalins and endorphins to begin. And research shows that those benefits can last up to 48 hours. Okay, I believe that is the end of our endocrine presentation. So how's everybody doing? Everybody's doing okay? You probably need a bathroom break, so let's go for about 9 minutes and come back at 7:30. Go take a bathroom break, stretch your legs, and just come right back at 7:30. Okay, so almost 10 minutes. Quick break, and then we'll finish up. Okay, thank you so much. Someone said they couldn't hear me talking, so I'm not sure, McKenna, if you just didn't hear me say we're going on break. So I hope everything's okay now with your sound. All right, let me erase this. Okay. All right, so we have 2 extra credit projects. So let's see. We have Alexis. Alexis, are you ready, honey? Okay, I'm gonna unmute you, but you may have to unmute you as well. Okay? So hold on. And you want to talk and I'll go through the slides? Is that how you want me to do it? Okay. All right, let's find Alexis. So Alexis, I like the name. Is this the whole page here or do I need to make it a different view? Oh, this is fine? Okay, so Alex is asking how long you can see the videotape version of past anatomy classes. Forever. We have them archived forever, okay? So that's a really good question that other people want to know. Okay, so let's find Alexis here.
Hi, everyone.
All right, we can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. It's nice to talk to you guys for once. So my extra credit project was on taste, the sense of taste. And I just titled it, The Girls Got Taste, because I thought it was
I
a fun.
love it. It was very clever.
Thank you.
So I'll just go through the slides.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so this is just a little bit about the anatomy and physiology of taste. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the words correctly, but the gustatory system or sense of taste, it's the sensory system that is partially responsible for the perception of taste. Taste is a perception produced or stimulated when a substance in the mouth has a chemical reaction with taste receptor cells that are located on small sensory papillae, aka the taste buds, which are located mostly on the tongue but can be found on the soft palate, upper esophagus, the cheek, and epiglottis.
Okay. I'm just answering a question here. All right, here we go.
So taste, along with olfaction and trigeminal nerve stimulation, registering texture, pain, and temperature, determines the flavors of food and other substances. These taste receptors sense the 5 different taste modalities, which are sweet, sour, saltiness, savory, and bitterness. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you're anything like me, you're thinking what I was thinking when I read this. Aren't saltiness and savory the same thing? But a little salt on the tongue versus a little MSG on the tongue would clear that up for you. It's a different sensation, which brings me to my next point. To add complexity of overall flavor is that what we actually believe what one specific flavor profile or taste to be in reality, it's actually several different sensations being processed all together. such as taste, texture, temperature, and odor. So all of those factors is what gives you that reaction to like understand, your brain understands what you're tasting. Here's some food for thought. You guys like that? I was trying to be funny. Ever wonder why some people like certain foods that others hate, or why some people can tolerate super spicy foods and others can't? What determines what tastes we like? Each person has their own DNA sequence or recipe that is different to everyone else. DNA helps determine how you taste and smell, and the messages sent to your brain about what's nice and what's not. So each of us tastes the flavor of food differently. However, when it comes to spicy foods, that's actually determined by the amount of spice receptors an individual has. The more receptors you have, the more sensitive to spice you are. So those people that can eat habaneros like it's nothing have less spice receptors than people like me who can't even handle hot Cheetos.
Aw.
And it's okay, because people have made fun of me my whole life because I'm cultured and I don't really like spicy food, but that's okay. And it got worse after pregnancy. After pregnancy, I really don't like spicy food. Pathologies. You could click to the next one for this. I just thought that was a cute slide.
Oh, that is a cute slide. Okay.
Okay. Hypogeusia. Can you help me out with this one, Dina?
Hypogeusia.
Hypogeusia. What is it? It's a diminished sense of taste, which sounds awful. What causes it is a nutrient deficiency, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, poor diet, nervous system diseases such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and multiple sclerosis. Treatments, you can up your zinc, your level of zinc that you take, or low dose of anti-anxiety or antidepressant medications, and actually help with that, which I thought was pretty interesting. So then I'm guessing this one's ageusia.
Yep.
Is the complete loss of taste. Certain medications can bring this on. Of course, nutritional deficiencies. In some cases, it's a symptom of COVID-19, or even when you have like a cold. And then certain infections can do it as well. Treatments are treat the underlying condition. So if it's like COVID or the cold, you can let it run its course. You could use antihistamines to unblock the sinuses, and that'll help you get your taste back, or like decongestions, and then antibiotics for the infections that would cause it. Dysgeusia, an alteration or distortion in the perception of taste. So causes of this could be like bacterial, viral, or fungal infections of the gums, mouth, or throat. And the first thing that came to my mind when I was reading about this was oral thrush, because my baby had it a few months ago. And I was wondering if that altered her taste, because she definitely didn't want to eat. But certain medications do it. Pregnancy, tobacco use. A lot of people who smoke cigarettes don't taste like saltiness as much. Like they add more salt to their food. Aging, as we get older, we don't have such a strong sense of taste anymore. And the side effects of chemotherapy and radiation. Treatments for this is antibiotics, avoiding spicy foods, foods that are rich in preservatives, and foods that are high in sugars, which we should avoid anyways. The anatomy, a little bit more about the anatomy of the taste. So many taste buds are present within the papillae of the tongue. Taste neurons project from taste cells in the tongue, esophagus, and palate to the medulla in the brainstem. So basically, from the medulla, taste signals travel to the thalamus and then to the primary gustatory cortex. So basically, in a nutshell, you put some food in your mouth, it touches your little receptors on your tongue, and it shoots a message to the brainstem and then all up your brain, and then that's what tells you like, this tastes good, or ooh, this needs salt and pepper. And then there's a little photo on the side. Oh well, that's okay. We're good.
Let me go back.
Yeah, the little photo on the
Okay.
side is kind of showing what a taste bud looks like, because we see them on our tongues, but like this was like a better, closer look at it, and like all the different like actual little parts to a taste bud. It's not just like one little thing, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, we can go on to the next one. Okay, so this is debunked. Years ago, before like this was like scientifically debunked, people thought that certain maps on the tongue tasted certain flavors, but then like researchers did, you know, they looked into this and they tested it, and it's not true. Other parts of the mouth tasted different flavors as well, but over the years, countless studies have debunked this misconception. Chief among these is a 1974 study by Virginia Collings, a scientist from the University of Pittsburgh's psychology department. Collings confirmed that the differences in sensitivity were virtually insignificant, and that all taste receptors in the oral cavity, even the ones that aren't around the tongue, such as those in the cheeks and the roof of the mouth and even the upper esophagus, can detect all tastes. So the map on the right, how like they said like, oh, the back of the tongue can only taste bitter, like that's not true.
Okay.
And this is just kind of like a little, I call this one refined taste, because you know we all have refined taste. um but yeah, so this is kind of what I was explaining, the little map of how it works. Like you put the food in your mouth, it touches your receptors, sends a signal to your brain stem and then into your brain, and then different parts of the brain react, and then that's how you get whether this is sweet and it's good, or ooh, that's too salty, I don't like it, you know, things like that. I thought that was a pretty interesting reference. Healing therapies and remedies. So garlic compounds for antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activities. So this is like basically what you could do if you're having a problem with your taste. Ginger tea or chewing small bits of ginger, it enhances your sense of smell and stimulates the taste buds. Regular dental care such as brushing, flossing, and using mouthwash. Also get your cleanings regularly, because that calculus, it could just really, that's gross. Staying hydrated. Notice like when you're not hydrated and you have a dry mouth, like what happens, and then like your tongue gets all white, and that's like that affects your taste buds as well. Chewing gum to keep your mouth from drying out is also a nice way to just kind of, I mean, it's better to drink water, but if you're in a pinch, just anything to keep your mouth from drying out. Rinsing your mouth out with warm salt water is an easy and efficient way to cure an inflamed taste bud or even like a sore throat. Taste buds, this was just like a little blurb of like something interesting. Taste buds are quick to heal without an intervention and usually resolve in a few days to a couple of weeks. Like, so I don't know if anyone else has ever had this, but I've had where like one little taste bud on my tongue is like, it hurts and like it's just very sensitive, and then like, you know, you gargle with hot salt water in like a day or two, it's back to normal. That's kind of like what I was getting at with that. Here's some random fun facts that I learned while like researching stuff for taste. We likely evolved to enjoy sweet, savory, and salty foods because there's an indication of nutrients in them, and we tend to dislike bitter foods as it indicates like toxins. So our body naturally gravitates to what it should have versus what it shouldn't have. But then sugar came about, and then you know that changed things up a little bit too. And then I found this one to be really interesting, is that vegetables really do taste worse to children. As we age, our taste buds tend to die off without new ones being generated, thus making foods that taste more bitter more tolerable. So veggies to us taste fine, and for the little ones, they can be really strong because their taste buds, they have so many more that are like fresh and new and more sensitive. So that's sometimes why like little kids just can't stand like asparagus or something really bitter like that. A taste bud only lives for 10 to 14 days, RIP. Fewer taste buds grow back as you get older, and our taste buds get replaced every 2 weeks. And you probably already knew that because I've heard people say something along those lines like my whole life. Like you could like something one day and then 6 months later not like it, or, you know, vice versa, because the taste buds are constantly changing. Thank you so much. I hope you liked my PowerPoint, and I did plug my socials because I'm bougie like that. So feel free to add me on Instagram.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alexis, that was awesome. Thank you.
For
Let's
giving
see
me that.
what your classmates are saying. Great job, Alexis did amazing. Great job, good work. Great job, that was great. Thank you,
Thanks,
it was
guys.
amazing.
Thank
I'm
you so
gonna read them all to you. Thank you, thank you. Oh, thanks. Good job, very informative. I love your energy, Alexis. Really good, loved it. So there you go. Oh, awesome job, Alexis.
Thank you. You guys are the best.
Awesome. Thank you, hon. I'm gonna close you down.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for the fun facts and followed you on the gram. So what are you talking about here? Instagram?
Yeah, that's Kenna. I
You
just saw
have-
your request come through.
Oh, Coconut Water XO, that's your Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay. You gotta tell old people like me that we don't know stuff like that. Okay. All right, I'm gonna mute Alexis. Ruby, are you ready? Let's get Ruby. Let me see if Ruby said yes. Ah, Ruby's ready. Okay, let me get yours is the sense of smell. And let me get Ruby talking. Okay, Ruby, you're unmuted on my side.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, but you're gonna have to talk a lot louder.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard that my microphone on my computer is really awful, so let me know if you need me to speak louder throughout.
Okay.
All right, so we are going to do the sense of smell. So we can go to the next one. We're going to start off with the technical terms. So the sense of smell, the technical term for that will be the olfactory system. And then the act of smelling, would be a verb, which would be olfaction. We can skip to the next.
Oh, sorry.
No,
You tell me when to move. You tell me when to move the slide.
all right, I'm ready for you.
Okay.
All right, so our anatomy. So the outer top of our nose, which would be, the top of the ridge. If we look at this skeleton here, the only thing that the nose is supported by is the upper part of the bone. The lower bottom, which that description is a little bit confusing. It really means the inside layer of our nose, the part that you can't really see from the outside. That is made up of cartilage plates. The expanded sides, which are the little round nostrils that you can see on the side, these are called ala, so A-L-A. It's formed only of skin, and that's internally and externally. And then each layer of skin has fibrofatty tissue between. And so that's what creates our nostrils. The middle border is called our septum. And I know a lot of people right now have septum piercings. And so that's a good way to identify it. It is a highly vascular mucous membrane. Made up of epithelial tissue with cartilage covering the front part of it. So if let's say you were to stick your fingers in your nose, the lower bottom part would be the bottom part of the nose that you would feel, and then the septum would cover that middle border. And as we learned before, the epithelial tissue is typically shiny, and it helps with lubrication. The epithelial wall that covers the septum, it contains like movable cilia to capture odor molecules, to hold them in the mucous membrane, and then they end up transmitting a nerve impulse through the olfactory nerves to the olfactory bulb, which we'll talk about in 1 second. All right, next slide. All right, so we're going to go into the steps and with a little bit more anatomy. So next slide. So it all starts with the odor. Molecules form a chemical compound that they basically float through the air. When they reach the nostrils, a chemical reaction happens in the olfactory receptors, and those are located throughout the entirety of the nasal cavity, as you can see in the picture. Nerve impulses are sent directly to the olfactory bulb, which you can see is at the top portion of the picture. The olfactory bulb receptors are responsible for transmitting the messages of sense and send information to 2 areas. Now, in my opinion, this is where it gets pretty exciting. It's sent to the frontal lobe and the limbic system. The frontal lobe recognizes what the odor is, while this, and then I will talk about the limbic system in the next slide because it's very exciting to me, but the cerebral cortex is said to be where we experience the sensation of smelling itself. All right, next slide. So here's where it gets really exciting for me. So the limbic system, it says that it was related to memory and emotions. When they receive the nerve impulse of sense, they trigger strong emotions based on previous experiences because the limbic system has access to situational memories, people, or places related to the perceived olfactory sensations. So this is very cool because if you think about different times that you've been somewhere like the movies and you can almost smell the popcorn just throughout your memory. There are even scents of familiar people in your life. You can walk into a store and you can start smelling candles and you're like, hey, this smells like my aunt or something like that. Smells that can remind you of someone's house, or even something as gross as that time that you drank too much and then you vomited everywhere. That's a very specific scent that everyone can kind of think of, and it just kind of pops into their head and you can almost smell it just by thinking about it. So that part of our brain is pretty cool in my opinion. Next slide. So moving on to disorders that are related to the sense of smell. We start out with dysomia. It's a distortion of the sense of smell. It can be broken down into 2 separate types of smell disorders, those being parosmia, which refers to a change in the perception of odor. And this can mean that an odor may smell different than it did to you in the past, or you may now find an odor repulsive which you previously enjoyed. So like we kind of talked about before, in maybe the last presentation, she said that with her pregnancy, she found some things different tasting, before and after. So it's in kind of that way, we can kind of relate that to parosmia, not in the same way, but kind of in the way that you're just changed. So you may be used to really like the smell of lavender, and then you might not like it anymore. Then we move on to phantosmia, which refers to the perception of smell, which is not present. So that would mean that so that just basically means that I could be smelling, maybe toast. And we've all heard that that can be referred to in bad ways, but something that is just not there. It's not possible for you to be able to smell it, but it is there in your brain. It's picking up, it's triggering the sensors. Then we move down to hyposmia, which is a decreased ability to sense smells. And then anosmia is a total inability to smell smells. In some cases, a total inability to smell smells can really affect the way that somebody works. The lack of one sense can cause a lot of problems for somebody, specifically with mental health issues. If you once had the ability to smell or taste, obviously to hear or see, which is something that we hear more often, but it does still apply to the other senses, where in this case, if you had anosmia and let's say you didn't have it before, it can cause depression and things like that for some people. All right, and then so all of these things can be caused from anything as small as allergies, where it's just a temporary situation where your nose or nasal passages are just a little bit clogged, to anything as serious as head trauma or brain tumors. All right, we can skip to the next one. All right, so here is my fun part of the presentation. So pretty recently for me personally, and I think that a lot of people are talking about it now, but it's obviously been a thing for a long time. So we might have heard of clairvoyance, clairsentience, but clairalience is it means clear smelling. So what that means is that it's intuitive or psychic sort of ability almost. There are also names for it called clairolfication or clairessence. How is it experienced? So a lot of people who are said to be clairalient are they can in a way smell energy. So this can be related through spirits or through experiences. So I'm going to give you a very specific example, like in literature. So in The Shining, I don't know if it's talked about in the movie, but definitely in the book, the caretaker of the hotel, he also has some of the shining, just like the main boy in the movie. And these abilities for both of them, they're able to almost see the future, but just little clips of it, or have a strong feeling. The main caretaker of the hotel, whenever he gets a strong psychic feeling, he will get a very intense smell of oranges. So this is a signal to him that either something bad is going to happen, or it's, for the most part in the story, it's been used when something bad was going to happen. But throughout the story too, it was a mention of there being ghosts or spirits, and then he would smell oranges when those were around as well. So that's just kind of a good way to kind of explain the psychic connection between smelling. So whether it's believed as a thing or not, there are some people who are very sensitive to smell, and then your brain is connected to those things. The development of it, you can strengthen your clairalience by doing smell sensitivity tests. So in deep tissue, we learned a little bit about touch sensitivity. So just kind of closing your eyes and feeling around. So you can kind of apply that to the sense of smell too. You can, some of the advice is going and smelling pretty much everything that you can, going into stores and picking up something and smelling what it smells like to be able to heighten your senses. Paying attention to what's around you and what the smells like when they're around you. Some of us have watched crime shows where they'll ask you to go over what the traumatic experience was. What did it smell like? What did it look like? And so whenever you're walking around, to take in the smells that are happening around you, and to take deep inhales and just kind of sit in that moment for a second, just because things will go unnoticed all the time. Another thing that is said to lower smell ability is actually salt. So it was said that if you would like to heighten your smelling ability, to put less salt into your food or to use it a little bit less. It's in pretty much everything that we have, but there are definitely some occasions where we can avoid using more of it. But yeah, I just find it all super interesting. And then to our last slide, it is just my sources. If it's mostly just so that I didn't know if you guys needed it, but also if you guys wanted to learn anything more about this kind of thing, olfactory systems specifically, all of these things were very easy to digest or fairly easy to digest. So, and I also find it super interesting. So there you go.
Well, Ruby, thank you so much. That was awesome. Let me see what your classmates are saying. So much information. You did great. Ruby, you did amazing, amazing. Good job. Awesome job. Awesome, Ruby. Very interesting. Good job. Awesome. Great job. Nice job, Ruby. They're all coming in. Very interesting. So awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for adding about Claire Alliance. How do you pronounce it?
Oh geez.
Claire Aliens?
Claire Aliens, yeah, or Claire Essence, depending on what you've heard.
Or Claire Essence.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I am going to, great presentation. Excuse me, great presentations. All right, so let me, Ruby, oh, I think you already muted yourself. Okay. Very good presentations. Awesome. So Mindy, you there?
I'm here, man. Those were fantastic.
Weren't they great?
They really were.
I love it when people do presentations, and I think that even worked. We could hear them fine.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. So anyway, that's really all that Mindy and I have for you. If you weren't able to get your exam coaches done for makeup time, then you will be dealing with the office from tonight on. I do have to turn in the closing paperwork, but I really appreciate you guys. You've been a great class. And the thing, oh, thank you. Alexandra said that it was a great end to our class. So what's going to happen when we say goodnight and we log off to the webinar? Then and the class evaluation is going to pop up. Dan set it up earlier today. We love you too. You guys are so very welcome. But when the class evaluation pops up, please fill it out. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia, so much. Thank you, all of you, for your comments. And Dan and Mindy and I, it's been our absolute pleasure to teach you in this online course for anatomy. And thank you so much for everything. Look forward to meeting you soon. Azalea, Mindy, I know you can see all of this. Dan can see it all later. But even though we're checking out at 8 o'clock, you'll still be given credit till 10 o'clock. So no worries about that. But if you are late for class, that will still be checked off your attendance. People are saying they really enjoyed the class, saying thank you to Dan. Denise, Dan, and Mindy, I look forward to meeting you all in person as well. Thanks for everything. You've done a good job. Thank you, David. Love the class. I hope to meet I don't know if any of you are going to take lymph drainage in November or homeopathy in October. Oh, Samantha, good. Lymph drainage. I'll meet you then. Carlos is saying thanks to all the classmates too. All the great questions. Thank you, Rachel. I will take care. So the next class I'll be in live is homeopathy. Mindy, what class will you be in live? What are you doing now?
I have two circulatory classes running, and then you and I have another anatomy, and then sports will come up in November.
Okay. So for anybody that's interested, if you'd like to retake the anatomy and do it in person, anatomy is going to be live starting January 2nd, Monday days and Friday nights in Escondido. And you could actually ask to be a class assistant so that you could attend the class again. Thank you, Nina. Looking forward to meeting all of you. Some of you I have been lucky enough to meet in lymph drainage or reflexology. So I'm going to go ahead and call this a night. Mindy, is there anything you want to say?
Just thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. It's been so nice, and hopefully I'll see you in another class or sometime around campus. Make
Yes.
sure to say hi.
Yes. All right. You guys go ahead when you're ready and log out. Good night. You too, June. Have a good rest of your night. Don't forget to do the eval. Go ahead and log out. Good night, Erica. Hey, Mindy, do you want to just kick everybody out?
Sure.